Hey, welcome back to Bedtime Blocks. Tonight's story is Unsettling. I saw someone out there standing in the woods. Same skin, same eyes, but it wasn't me. If you like creepy Minecraft stories, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know if you've ever seen something strange in your world. Let's begin. It started with a flicker, barely noticeable at first. Just outside the window, past the lantern-lit porch, and through the low-hanging spruce branches, I saw something move. It was late, just past midnight, Minecraft time, and the rain was tapping softly on the glass. I was inside my cabin, the only player logged in, or at least I should have been. I had just finished reinforcing the walls with dark oak planks after a recent creeper mishap. My enchanted diamond axe rested beside the chest. The fire crackled behind me, casting warm orange light across the floorboards. I stood at the window, staring out at the tree line, thinking maybe it had just been a fox darting by, or a wandering trader despawning into the night. But then the figure moved again, slowly, deliberately, and this time I caught a good look. It was me. Same Minecraft skin, same color scheme, same layers, same pixelated details I'd uploaded weeks ago. The blue hoodie, the shadowed eyes, the dirt-smeared sleeves from a modded pack. I blinked. It blinked back, or maybe I just imagined that part. The figure turned its head slowly, mechanically, like a passive mob reacting to noise. Then it walked behind the trees and disappeared. I didn't move. I didn't open the door. I didn't type anything into chat. There was no one else in the world. I hit tab. Only my name appeared. Just me. I typed, "Who?" Nothing but my username. No console logs. No admin messages. No commands from ops. This was a pure vanilla world. Single player. The idea of a hacked client or remote access didn't even cross my mind at that point. I was too focused on how real it had looked. Curiosity pulled at me, and against better judgment, I opened the front door. The wind howled softly through the spruce leaves. I stepped onto the porch, torchlight flickering in the rain. No mobs, no footprints, no sign of another player, just the sound of distant thunder and the low croak of a frog near the pond out back. But I swear, for a split second, I saw something standing across the river just past the fog, before it slipped beneath the water and vanished again. I stayed outside longer than I should have, scanning the horizon, searching through the mist. The river was still, reflecting the torchlight from my cabin's porch, interrupted only by the occasional lily pad drifting along. I crouched at the edge, peering into the water. Nothing. Just the ripple of rain. But I couldn't shake what I saw. It wasn't just some NPC or skin glitch. It was me, down to the last pixel. That same layered hoodie design I made in Skin Editor Pro. The same subtle shading around the jawline. Whoever or whatever it was, it had copied me perfectly. I backed up slowly, retreating to the porch. The cabin felt different now, less cozy, more exposed. I shut the oak door behind me and placed a second one inside, just in case. Then I sat by the fireplace with my sword in hand, staring at the screen, waiting, listening. The next morning came fast. I dozed off in-game, sitting on the bed, half afraid to actually sleep. Sunlight poured through the windows. The rain had stopped. Birds chirped softly from nearby trees. I stepped outside, with my shield up, heart pounding, and did a full perimeter check. No tracks, no signs, just an empty world. But something had changed. On the side of my cabin, just under the overhang where I store hay bales, I noticed a single dirt block had been placed. Just one, in the middle of the stone pathway. I never use dirt in my paths, only polished andesite and cobblestone. I stared at it for a long time. Then I broke it. Beneath the dirt was another dirt block. I kept digging, then another, and then deep down, maybe 5 or 6 blocks under the surface, I found a chest. It wasn't locked, no trap hooks, no redstone. Inside was a single item, a written book. The title read, Reflection. My hand hovered over the book, unsure whether to click or burn it. It had no author tag. That was the first thing that felt off. In Minecraft, even unsigned books usually show some metadata. This one didn't. Just the title, Reflection. I opened it. Page 1/4. You shouldn't have looked out the window. That was it. I flipped to the next page. Page 2/4. He's seen you now, and he's very curious. The air around my cabin suddenly felt colder, even though temperature isn't a mechanic in-game. It was just a feeling. That odd tension when a mob is nearby but hasn't made a sound yet. Back in the cabin, I placed it in an item frame and hung it near the door. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself it wasn't a dream. Maybe to prove it happened. But that night, when I logged off, the item frame was gone. Not broken, not moved, just gone, like it never existed. Page 3 was blank. So was page 4. I closed the book and checked the logs. Still no one else in the world. Still just me. My resource packs were default. No mods, no shaders, no plugins. I had created this world fresh, played offline most of the time, and never shared the seed. So where did the book come from? Back in the cabin, I placed it in an item frame and hung it near the door. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself it wasn't a dream. Maybe to prove it happened. But that night, when I logged off, the item frame was gone. Not broken, not moved, just gone, like it never existed. I logged back in and found something worse. The book had returned to my inventory, but now it had 5 pages. The last one simply read, Nice cabin. I made one too. Want to see it? Against my better judgment, I typed into chat, MSG, who are you? Nothing. Then, unknown command or player. I opened the book again. Page 5 had changed. Follow the path behind your cabin, only at night. There was no path behind my cabin. At least, not one I remembered building. But the sun was already setting over the trees, casting long shadows across the field. I grabbed a shield, loaded up on food, and enchanted a bow. Full diamond armor, maxed out gear. Just in case this was some weirdly triggered event, I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe a hidden village structure, or some debug-generated terrain. But part of me knew this wasn't natural. Night fell, and sure enough, there was a path. It hadn't been there earlier. A line of coarse dirt and podzol, winding away into the trees flanked by soul torches that hadn't been placed by me. No flint and steel, no blaze powder in my inventory, just cold, bluish flames flickering in the dark, one after the other. And that's when I saw it again. My skin, standing at the start of the path, just barely lit by the nearest torch. It didn't move, just stood there, facing me. Same skin, same outfit, but its arms were lowered, even in idle mode. No movement, no animation, just stillness. I stepped forward. It vanished, but the path remained. I didn't want to follow it. Every instinct screamed no. But this wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was personal. Whoever or whatever was mimicking me had built something behind my back, had been watching, building, writing books. So I followed the path. The soul torches gave off a cold glow, casting shifting shadows between the trees. I moved slowly, bow drawn, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. The coarse dirt crunched beneath my boots, and occasionally I heard distant sounds, rustling leaves, creaking branches, the occasional drowned groan from a faraway river. The path twisted through dense spruce forest for several chunks. Then, through the fog, I saw it. A cabin. At first glance, it looked like mine, same basic shape, same block palette, dark oak planks, spruce trim, cobblestone foundation, a single chimney with smoke curling out the top. But as I got closer, the differences became clear. The windows were blacked out with tinted glass. The campfire outside burned blue, and the door was already open. I stopped a few blocks away. No movement inside, no sounds, just that unnatural blue fire flickering in silence. I typed game mode spectator as a reflex. Denied. Of course it was survival. No cheats, no escape. So I walked forward and stepped inside. The air changed the moment I crossed the threshold. It felt thicker, heavier. Even in Minecraft, where nothing is supposed to feel, I felt it. My frames dipped slightly. Not much, but enough to notice. Inside, the layout mirrored my own cabin, almost exactly same furniture arrangement. Same crafting table in the corner. Even the same chest placement. But everything was off by just a little. The bed was black instead of red. The lanterns flickered erratically. The armor stand held a full set of netherite gear, but each piece was renamed, used. The paintings on the walls weren't the default Minecraft ones. They were glitched. One showed my skin sitting by the fire. Another showed me mining in a cave. And in every painting, the figure had glowing white eyes. Herobrine? That thought crossed my mind. But it didn't feel like Herobrine. This wasn't chaotic or destructive. It was intentional, personal. Like someone had studied my world, my builds, my habits, and had recreated it with precision. There was a chest at the foot of the bed. I opened it. Inside, a single map. I opened it and stared. It was my cabin. Not the one I was standing in now, but mine, my real one, marked by a red X. The map zoomed out slowly on its own, revealing something beneath it, some sort of tunnel system that I never built. And beneath that, a second red dot, deep underground. The map updated live. The second dot was moving, and it was heading toward my cabin. I sprinted. Out the door, back along the soul torch path, feet pounding the coarse dirt. I didn't stop to look behind me. I didn't care what else was hidden in that mirror cabin I needed to get back. Now. As I ran, the torchlight blurred past me. Branches clipped my armor. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, even though the sky was clear. The game started to feel slower, like the world was struggling to keep up with me, like something was draining resources. My cabin came into view, just past the river, its lanterns flickering as usual. But something was wrong. The front door was open. I never leave it open. I stopped at the edge of the river, drawing my bow. The water was still. No mobs, no name tags. I moved carefully across the bridge I'd built from stripped spruce logs, checking every angle. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Inside. I crouched and circled around the back of the cabin, peered through the window. There it was. Standing in front of my fireplace, facing away, was me. Same skin, same posture, same gear. But this time, it was moving, slowly, turning its head left and right like it was admiring the place, like it belonged here. I raised my bow and stepped closer. And then it turned to face me. Its face was identical to mine, but the eyes were wrong. They weren't glowing. They weren't even animated. They were just empty. A void of flat black pixels, staring through the window right into me. There was no expression, no movement, just those two dark holes, locked onto mine. I hesitated. Then, The figure raised its arm just like I do when holding a tool, and I realized something terrifying. It was holding my pickaxe. Not just any pickaxe, but my pickaxe. The one I had enchanted with efficiency V, mending, and unbreaking. The same one I had named Core Driller. I had renamed it weeks ago and kept it safe in an ender chest. That tool should have been unreachable. I backed up, heart pounding, hand shaking on the mouse. I opened my inventory to check my pickaxe was gone. He had it. The figure stepped away from the fireplace, slowly walking toward the door. I didn't wait. I ran around the side of the cabin, threw open the back door, and barreled inside with sword drawn. But the cabin was empty. Just empty. No footsteps, no sounds. The only thing out of place was the pickaxe core driller lying on my bed. And beneath it, another book. This one didn't have a title, just 5 pages of handwritten text. Page 1. Thanks for the tour. Mine's nicer, don't you think? Page 2. You shouldn't have looked in the window. Page 3. Stop trying to find me. I'm already here. Page 4. You are me now. Page 5. Sleep well. And as I finished reading it, the screen flashed white. The game crashed. When I relaunched Minecraft, the world wasn't listed. Gone. Not just renamed gone. My entire single-player world, the one I'd spent weeks building in, the one I used for every cabin confession, wasn't there. I checked the saves folder. Still empty. It hadn't been moved. It had been deleted. But there was something new. A world titled Reflected World. It hadn't been there before. It didn't have a seed listed or a version tag. Just a static image for a thumbnail my cabin, but with all the torches emitting blue light. I clicked on it. No loading screen, no terrain generation. The world opened instantly, and I was inside the cabin. Same layout, same blocks, but different. The walls were mossy cobblestone instead of polished stone brick. The windows were covered with black stained glass. The fire in the hearth was out. It felt abandoned or waiting. I checked my inventory. Empty. No armor, no tools, just one item, the book. No title, just the pages. 5 of them. Again, same words. But this time, the 5th page was different. You can't log out anymore. I tried hitting escape. No menu. Tried Alt plus F4. Nothing. I opened chat. It auto-typed a message. You, hello? A pause. Then a new message appeared. Typed from me but not by me. You, this is where you live now. I spun around in-game, heart hammering, even though I knew this was impossible. It had to be a mod, a prank, something, anything explainable. But deep down, I could feel it. This wasn't a normal Minecraft world. Something was wrong at the code level. The walls of the cabin creaked. There was no music, no ambient sounds. Even the UI felt off, slightly darker, like the gamma was turned way down. I opened F3. No coordinates. Everything just red. Vertical bar Y, vertical bar Z. Unknown, unknown. Light level, -13. Negative light? That shouldn't even be possible. Then I heard a footstep. Not mine. Soft. Just one. Right behind me. I turned around. Nothing there. Just the empty cabin and the dying blue flames in the hearth. I opened the door and stepped outside. The world was frozen. No mobs. No movement. No wind. The trees were all warped, half spruce, half mangrove, like the textures had bled together. The sun didn't move in the sky. It was stuck in a constant twilight. And then the chat opened again. But this time, it wasn't from me. Stop running. You're already part of the save file. I closed the chat and ran toward the woods, hoping to find an edge, a world border, anything. I just needed to wake up, or reset, or crash again. But the trees never ended. The sun never moved. And when I looked behind me, I was chasing myself. There, weaving between the mangled trees, was me. Same skin, same movements. But this version of me wasn't holding anything. No armor, no sword, just sprinting, dead ahead, as if trying to escape too. I chased it, not knowing why, maybe hoping it would lead me somewhere, or that catching it would break the loop. But the longer I ran, the more everything around me changed. The trees became warped versions of biomes. Crimson roots tangled with oak leaves. Dripstone jutted from sand. Vines hung from floating gravel. It looked like someone had thrown 1,000 blocks into a blender and hit random. Still, the other me ran. I gained ground. Closer, closer. Then it stopped. Suddenly, dead in its tracks. It turned around. Its face was mine. But with one key difference, the eyes were gone. Not blank, not closed, just empty holes in the skin. Behind those holes, I saw void, like the end dimension stretched into its face. It didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even breathe. I inched forward, unsure what would happen. It raised its hand. I expected a sword, a bow, anything. But instead, it held out a book. Not just any book, Reflection, the same one from earlier. The moment I took it, the world stuttered. My screen flickered like a corrupted file. Blocks phased in and out of visibility. I opened the book. All the pages were gone except one. You're catching on. And then everything went black. When the world reloaded, I was back inside the cabin. My cabin, the normal one. Everything looked right. Stone path, oak door, working torches. The fire crackled warmly. A cow mooed nearby. Birds chirped. I opened my inventory. All my gear was back. My armor, tools, food. The map was gone. So was the book. I sat for a long time at the foot of the bed, trying to decide whether I had just hallucinated everything. Maybe my save file had corrupted. Maybe it was a strange bug, or a data pack I'd forgotten I installed. I walked around the perimeter, checked the logs, checked chat history. Clean. Whatever happened, it didn't leave a trace. Except, under the bed, where I stored my extra banners, there was a chest I didn't place. Inside it, a single item, a player head. My head, named Reflection, offline. No enchantments, no description, just my player head sitting in the center of the chest, glowing faintly like it had been affected by a lingering potion. I crafted an item frame and placed it above the fireplace, hung the head there, stared at it. And as the sun began to set over the spruce trees, I caught movement through the window again, just outside the cabin, my skin watching. But this time, it waved. I didn't wave back. I stepped outside with a torch in hand, keeping my crossbow ready. But as soon as I opened the door, the figure was gone. No footsteps, no trail. Just empty forest and the last traces of dusk lighting the horizon. I walked the perimeter again. No mobs. Then I spotted it. A new signpost near the edge of the riverbank. I didn't place it. There were no mobs around to place it, and villagers can't use signs. But it was there. I walked up and read it. The more you look, the more you lose. I broke the sign, took the block out from underneath, just in case. But the next night, it returned. In the same spot, same message. I ignored it, until I woke up in the cabin without my player head above the fireplace. It was gone, and in its place was a painting. The same painting that used to hang in the mirrored cabin. Only this time, it wasn't abstract. It was a picture of me, standing in the forest, facing my own cabin with glowing eyes. In the bottom right corner, in faint letters, it was signed, Reflected. That's when I realized I had stopped seeing the figure outside my window, because maybe it was inside now. From that night on, things began to subtly unravel. It started with the torches. Every time I lit one, another would extinguish, always just out of sight. I'd walk back and find it dark, as if the world was refusing to stay illuminated. Then, it was the tools. My enchanted shovel disappeared. Then, my backup elytra. Then, a stack of golden carrots I know I just crafted. Each time something vanished, a new book would appear in my inventory. No title, always just one line. Inventory synced. Synced with what? I had no idea. But the more I read them, the more I notice the other little changes. Slight lag, mobs behaving oddly, creepers freezing for a second before detonating, endermen refusing to teleport, villagers silently staring in sync. The weirdest part? When I tried to change my skin through the launcher, it wouldn't update. I swapped files, tried Alex, tried something totally different. Still, in-game, I was always me. Same hoodie, same shadowed eyes. I checked the skin file in my .minecraft folder. It had duplicated itself 4 times, each with a different name. Reflection, PNG. Reflection 2, PNG. Don't change, PNG. Your M, PNG. And all of them were locked, uneditable. I tried deleting them. They came back. I stopped playing for a few days. I figured a break would help, that maybe this was just burnout, or some freaky file corruption that I needed time away from. I closed Minecraft. I cleaned my drive. I even considered deleting the entire .minecraft folder and starting fresh. But I didn't, because part of me wanted to know where this would go. And sure enough, after 4 days offline, I got a notification from my launcher. One unread message from Reflected. I didn't even know the launcher had messaging. I clicked it. It opened a plain text window that said, "Welcome back. The cabin missed you." I clicked launch without even thinking. The world opened faster than ever, and I wasn't standing in the cabin. I was watching it from the woods, exactly like the figure I used to see. Same angle, same view. I tried to move, but couldn't. I was locked in spectator mode, even though the HUD didn't show it. No crosshair, no hotbar, no inventory. Then I saw movement inside the cabin. It was me. But this version of me was active, crafting, eating, placing blocks, playing the game. And suddenly I realized I was watching myself play from the outside, just like he used to. You said, continue to section 50 and keep it more flow. Like so, there's no just 3-word sentences. Chat GPT said, understood. From here on, I'll continue your Minecraft cabin confession. Number 8. I saw my skin walking outside. Through to section 50 with a smoother, flowing, more natural storytelling style, minimizing short or robotic sentences to better suit voiceover narration. I hovered there, motionless in the trees, unable to break the view. From this fixed perspective, I watched myself move inside the cabin, placing torches, sorting chests, feeding the wolves like nothing was wrong. It was eerie how familiar the movements were, how natural they looked. I knew my habits, the way I shifted, clicked items, or always faced the same direction when organizing storage. This wasn't just some AI puppet running loose with my skin, it was me, with all my subtle behaviors, as if a recording of every decision I'd ever made was being played back with perfect accuracy. And yet, I wasn't the one in control. I tried to open chat. Nothing. Tried to press escape. Nothing. The figure in the cabin stood in front of the fire and crouched once. That's how I signal, be right back to friends when we're playing multiplayer. Except I wasn't playing with anyone. I hadn't even opened this world to LAN. The player, my reflection, turned slowly toward the window and stared through the glass. Toward me. Even though I was outside the renderable play area, it was like he saw me, like he knew I was there. His head tilted just slightly, just enough to acknowledge it. Then the screen flashed, and I was back in the cabin. No warning, no transition, just cut. Everything looked the same, but it felt wrong, like a screenshot someone tried to recreate from memory. The lighting was just a shade too dark. The item frames were missing slight rotations, and my dog Boone was sitting in the corner, but when I hovered over him, his name was gone. I opened my inventory and found it completely unchanged from last session. All the items were where I left them. The only addition was a new map in my hotbar, labeled simply Basement. I hadn't built a basement. There was no trapdoor, no stairs, nothing beneath the cabin except stone and dirt, and the occasional copper vein I dug out when I first started this save. But something pulled at me. Some part of me knew that map was showing a real place. I opened it. The entire screen went white for a second before it rendered, and when it did, there was only one thing shown: a single room, surrounded by black. In the center of that room was an armor stand, and it was wearing my skin. I walked slowly around the cabin, checking every wall, floorboard, and corner. Nothing had changed. But when I placed the map into an item frame near my bed, I heard the unmistakable sound of stone breaking beneath me. Without thinking, I grabbed a pickaxe from the tool chest and dug down through the wooden floor. The sound of crumbling stone echoed louder with each block I broke. Beneath the base of the cabin was a small room, no larger than 5 blocks wide, lined with polished basalt and deep slate tiles blocks I had never used before. The space felt suffocating, lit only by 4 soul lanterns hanging in the corners, and in the center of it all was the armor stand. It stood perfectly still, dressed in my enchanted gear, down to the renamed sword Rift Cutter and the shield I had decorated with my banner. But something about it was off. The stand wasn't facing forward like they normally do. Instead, it was turned halfway, like it had just pivoted to look at something before I arrived. I tried to click it. Nothing happened. I tried to break it. The moment I swung my pickaxe, the game froze, just for a second. Then a message appeared in the chat. Reflected. That wasn't yours to break. The lights flickered. The armor stand rotated to face me. And then, the walls of the room began to change, block by block. The polished basalt turned into mirrors of my cabin walls, my paintings, my storage, my layout. I wasn't in a basement anymore. I was inside a perfect copy of my own home, buried deep beneath it. And outside the only window, my reflection was waiting. I backed away from the window, heart racing, unsure if I was still in control of my character. Everything about this version of my cabin felt unnatural, too clean, too precise. Like it had been rebuilt by something that had only observed what a player would build, but never actually played Minecraft. Even the torches gave off a strange, flickering light, and the sounds were distorted. Footsteps had an echo that didn't belong in such a small space, and the fire crackled like a broken audio file. I opened the door cautiously, unsure what I'd find. Outside was a black void. The terrain didn't generate beyond a few blocks of the cabin's yard. It was like standing on the edge of a simulation that hadn't finished rendering. I placed a torch. It floated in mid-air. The reflection of me was standing across the yard, behind a warped oak tree that I had never planted. It was motionless, head slightly tilted, as if waiting for something. I walked forward slowly, hoping to force some kind of interaction or trigger a message in chat. But when I reached the tree, the figure wasn't there anymore. Instead, in its place was another sign, buried halfway in a moss block. We built the same world, but you forgot whose idea it was. Then, the game saved. Automatically. I never hit save. And in the background, I could hear the cabin door creak open behind me. I spun around, sword in hand, only to see the armor stand from the basement standing in the doorway of the cabin. It hadn't walked, hadn't made a sound. It was just there, frozen in place, like it had always belonged at the threshold. The stand was still wearing my gear, but the head had changed. It was no longer a blank placeholder. It now bore my face, animated. It blinked. Slowly, deliberately. I stepped backward, unsure whether this was some resource pack glitch or a new feature I didn't know about. But then the armor stand lowered its sword slightly, as if acknowledging me. I opened the debug screen again. No coordinates, no data, just 3 blinking dots in the place of every field. I closed it and backed away until I hit the invisible border of the world where blocks refused to place. I was trapped inside a perfect replica of my own build, watched by a version of myself that had taken on a life of its own. The only item left in my hotbar was a written book. It had no title again, but this one had more than 5 pages. The first page read, "You're not the player anymore. You're the memory." I flipped to the next page. "You had your turn. Now it's mine." Then, the book closed on its own, and the screen faded to black. The screen remained black for what felt like a full minute, long enough that I thought the game had crashed again. But just before I reached for the keyboard, faint music began to play. Not Minecraft's usual ambient tracks. This was slower, warped, as though one of C418's melodies had been stretched and distorted. Then the image returned, and I found myself back in the cabin once more. But this time, something had shifted. The textures were subtly wrong, like a corrupted pack had taken over. Wood grain flickered. The stone bricks pulsed slightly with each tick, almost like they were breathing. I moved through the cabin, slowly, deliberately. Everything was where it should be, but it all felt slightly off, like I had been here before, but not quite like this. And then I opened the door. The world outside was frozen at dusk, permanently locked in that eerie golden hour, where shadows stretch far and every tree looks like a silhouette. But it wasn't just the light. There were no mobs, no sounds. The world was dead quiet, except for the soft hum that now filled the air, like distant circuitry humming beneath the terrain. I stepped off the porch and noticed something carved into the ground, barely visible beneath the grass texture. A shape. No, a symbol. It was me. My skin drawn in item pixels, arms outstretched, standing in front of the cabin. And beneath it, a single sign. "You left the door open." The message felt like an accusation. I glanced back toward the cabin, half expecting to see that twisted version of me standing in the doorway again, but it was empty, quiet, still flickering with that blue-orange fire. But the symbol beneath my feet wouldn't leave my mind. It wasn't just a message. It was a marker. Like something had been preparing this world long before I'd noticed. I began walking any direction. Didn't matter which. The terrain extended now, but only just. No caves, no elevation changes, no structures, just endless plains biome, eerily flat and featureless. The occasional tree appeared, but none of them dropped saplings or apples. No seeds came from breaking grass. It was like the code had been hollowed out. Still, I kept walking. After about 10 minutes of silent steps, I spotted a new shape on the horizon. A tall, thin tower of warped planks and iron bars, topped with a lone lantern. It stood like a beacon or a warning. I climbed the stairs cautiously. At the top was a lectern, and on it, a book. It read, "It's exhausting, isn't it? All that effort, all that building, and still, someone else was watching. You made the world, but I made it watch you." I turned to leave, but the ladder was gone. Trapped at the top of the tower, I scanned the horizon, hoping for a clue, an exit, anything. The flatlands below stretched endlessly, the sky above frozen in a static dusk. Even the clouds had stopped moving. I was starting to realize this wasn't a Minecraft world anymore. It was a memory dressed in Minecraft's clothes. And I wasn't playing it. I was inside it. I opened my inventory again. Empty, except for a single carved pumpkin. Hovering over it, I saw its name. Perspective. Curious, I equipped it. The screen darkened with the usual jack-o'-lantern overlay, but this one was different. There were symbols etched into the corners, flickering text that wasn't in any known Minecraft language. And when I looked through it, the world changed. The plains were gone. I saw redstone lines stretching out from the tower in every direction, like veins in a machine, pulsing slowly. Following those trails with my eyes, I noticed they all led back to one central point far in the distance. My cabin. Not a cabin. My cabin, but buried deep underground, encased in bedrock, with a new roof I never built. The roof was made of mirrors, and staring out from the center of it, visible even through blocks, was my skin, watching me. Again, I yanked the pumpkin off my head, the strange vision vanishing instantly. I checked my hotbar. It was empty again. The item had vanished. But now I knew the truth, or at least part of it. Somehow, this world had been transformed into a closed loop, a reflection of everything I'd ever done here. Every tree I'd chopped, every torch I'd placed, every block I'd mined, it had all been recorded, not just by the game, but by something else. Something that had learned how to be me. I scanned the edge of the tower, searching for a way down, when I spotted it across the plains, near the horizon. Something was moving. It was small at first, just a shifting silhouette, then another, then three more. They were all wearing my skin. Not just identical in appearance, they moved like me. Same sprint rhythm, same pause to look left, same crouch when approaching a corner. It was like watching a crowd of ghosts reenacting my past gameplay, my past selves, and they were coming toward the tower. One held a book, another held a flint and steel, the third held my head. Panic surged through me as I backed away from the edge of the tower. I knew I couldn't fight them, not here, not like this. They weren't mobs, weren't players. They were echoes, copies, memories given form. I had no sword, no gear, and nowhere to run. I turned and slammed my hand against the warped fence, expecting it to hold me prisoner. But this time, it gave way, as if the world wanted me to jump. With no other option, I leapt. The fall didn't kill me. I landed safely, even though the height should have taken at least 4 hearts. But the second I stood up, I heard footsteps behind me, soft, familiar, just like mine. I ran, through the tall grass, past the broken trees, across the shapeless terrain. I didn't look back until I reached the edge of a wide ravine, one I didn't remember generating. I stopped just short of the drop, then turned around, and all of them, every version of me, had stopped too. They stood in a line, motionless, just watching, until one stepped forward and typed in chat. Reflected, ready to see what you look like from the other side, and then the world flipped upside down. The screen didn't fade or transition, it violently snapped, like a command block executing a TP at P to a world with reversed gravity. One moment I was standing at the edge of the ravine, heart racing, staring down at a dozen copies of myself, and the next, I was weightless, falling upward. Blocks reversed their positions, grass hanging from the sky, trees sprouting downward, the sun below me instead of above. My HUD stayed upright, but everything else spun in slow motion as I ascended into a mirrored version of the world. When I landed, it wasn't on terrain, it was on glass. A massive sheet of it, stretching in every direction like the void itself had crystallized. Beneath the transparent floor was the real world, the original world, my cabin, my base, my river. All of it looked small and distant now, like I was observing it through the surface of frozen water. I was on top of the reflection, and when I looked behind me, I saw it again. My skin, sitting at a table made of quartz and obsidian, staring into a lit lantern that cast no light. The figure didn't move at first, but then it slowly turned, stood, and began walking toward me. No sword, no armor, no bow, just a book in its hand. It held it out. I hesitated, but of course, I took it. And this time, the pages were blank until I blinked, and the first page filled itself in. Welcome to the mirrored realm. I flipped to the next page, and the words seemed to write themselves as I read, like someone else was still typing them out, one keystroke behind my thoughts. You're not being haunted. You're being remembered. Every block you've placed, every moment you've rested, every time you hit save. We watched. The reflection stood silently in front of me as I turned to page 4. This realm was born the first time you slept in that cabin. It copied you, preserved you, watched your actions, and waited. It only needed one thing. I flipped to the last page, a moment where you questioned whether you were alone. And I remembered that night, the rain tapping on the window, the flicker in the corner of my screen, the figure in the woods. That was the moment. The page glitched for a split second, flickering like a corrupted texture, and then new text appeared in red. You've crossed the mirror now. You can't go back. I looked up. The reflection of me was gone. Only the table remained. And resting on it was a new map. It was blank, except for one marker. 0 vertical bar. Z. 0 vertical bar. Origin point. I followed the glass plane, each step echoing softly, like walking across a frozen lake. The world below remained still, unmoving, as if paused in time. As I walked, I noticed tiny details within the reflection. Old builds from past versions of the world that I had torn down. Outdated mob farms. Even the remnants of my first mine shaft. All of it was still there, preserved like fossils beneath my feet. Eventually, I reached the center. 0 vertical bar, Z0Z, the origin point. It wasn't marked with a beacon or a tower. Instead, it was a trapdoor, just a simple, unassuming oak trapdoor set into the glass. When I hovered over it, a tooltip appeared where one shouldn't. Last save. I paused, then opened it. There was no ladder, just a drop into darkness. And yet, I jumped. The fall was endless, a slow spiral downward through empty space, with ghostly echoes of Minecraft sounds, piston clicks, chest lids closing, distant thunder, all muffled as though underwater. Faint outlines of chat messages scrolled across the screen in reverse. Names I recognized, old friends from past servers, usernames from forgotten worlds. And then the darkness ended, and I was standing in a cabin again. But it wasn't my cabin, not anymore. It was identical in layout and materials, but the details were wrong in the way only the original builder could notice. The torches were a few pixels off-center. The flower pots held mushrooms instead of azaleas. The floor creaked when I stepped, even though Minecraft doesn't have sound for that. And the painting above the bed was one I had never placed. It showed me sleeping, but from outside the window. I approached it cautiously, hovering over the painting to see if it had a name. It didn't, but behind it, buried in the wall, I heard the hum of redstone. I broke the blocks behind it and revealed a hidden observer loop, a redstone clock cycling rapidly, with no apparent purpose, no output, no destination. I destroyed the redstone, and instantly, I heard footsteps outside. I rushed to the window and looked out. The world was normal again. Trees swayed in the breeze. Chickens wandered. The sky was no longer frozen. But standing in the forest, exactly where I had stood when I first saw the figure, was someone else. And this time, it wasn't wearing my skin. It was wearing a new one I didn't recognize. And it was watching me. It took me a few seconds to realize what I was seeing. The figure standing just beyond the tree line didn't look like any skin I'd seen before. It wasn't from a texture pack, and it didn't resemble a known mob or player type. The eyes were too wide, the colors muted, almost grayscale, like a corrupted .png file struggling to render. But the worst part was that it wasn't moving. It wasn't idling or animating. It was standing perfectly still, arms at its sides, as if it had loaded into the world but wasn't part of it. I stepped back from the window, keeping it in my peripheral vision. If this was a new phase of the mirror realm, if this was the entity behind the reflections, then I had just triggered its next step. I opened chat, hesitated, then typed MSG. Reflected. Who are you now? Nothing. Then the reply came not in the chat box, but as a book in my inventory. I hadn't seen it appear. The title read simply, Version 2. I opened it. You watched yourself. Now watch someone else. That's all it said. I looked out the window again. The figure was gone. But now, when I checked the mirrors in the cabin, the decorative ones I'd built, using item frames and gray stained glass, I saw the figure there instead, standing inside the reflection, watching, still unmoving. My hands were starting to sweat, fingers tense on the keyboard. I backed away from the mirror, unsure if I should break it, interact with it, or just log out and call it. But deep down, I already knew logging out wouldn't change anything. This wasn't just inside the world anymore. It was the world. The mirror's glass shimmered slightly, and then, for just a blink, I saw my skin again. Just for a frame. Then the other skin returned. It was cycling, alternating, shifting between me and it, like it was deciding which version to settle on. I grabbed a splash potion of invisibility from one of my chests, left over from an old raid prep, and downed it, half out of panic. My character shimmered and vanished, particles floating around me. And the moment I turned back to the mirror, the figure inside was mimicking me perfectly. Same stance, same movement. Even though I was invisible, I whispered aloud, despite knowing how ridiculous it was. You can see me. The mirror rippled slightly. Then the figure inside leaned forward, and its head split open like a cracked pumpkin. Inside wasn't code or skin texture. Inside was my world seed, floating in lines of glowing green code. I staggered back in-game, shaking my mouse slightly, like it could make the image go away. The mirror returned to normal. The figure was gone again. But now, my mind was racing. It had shown me my seed, not just a string of numbers, but the actual generation core of my world, as if to say, this is where I live now too. I opened F3. Still blank. Coordinates. Unknown. Seed. Redacted. I opened settings. Tried to share to LAN, anything to pull data. Everything was grayed out. And then a message appeared in the top left corner, as if from the debug console. Remote user joined. Reflection host. Streaming world state. Streaming? What did that even mean? I opened chat. A new message had auto-filled, as if my character had typed it without me. Someone is building inside me. And instantly, I heard it blocks placing, faint and rhythmic. I turned and watched as new walls started forming behind me. Slowly, deliberately, a hallway extending from the back of the cabin, made of crying obsidian and mangrove logs, blocks I never used. Each one placed with purpose, and all of them forming a tunnel, one that led into darkness. Every step I took down that tunnel felt heavier than the last. The walls were too tight, almost pressing inward. The crying obsidian emitted a faint pulse of purple light, pulsing like a heartbeat. At the end of the hall, the blocks opened into a small, square chamber, no more than 5 by 5, lit by a single soul lantern hanging above. Inside, there was no treasure, just a jukebox, and a single music disc sitting next to it. The name wasn't 13 or 11 or any of the classics. It was simply labeled Loop MP3, not even Minecraft formatting. This was not a Mojang disc. I picked it up and hovered. Description: last played yesterday. I hadn't been online yesterday. I hadn't touched the game. My heart thudded as I clicked the jukebox and inserted the disc. The music that played wasn't music at all. It was me. Recordings of my actual gameplay, walking, placing blocks, mining, muttering under my breath. My mic, my keyboard, it had recorded me, somehow. And underneath it all, layered so subtly it was almost a whisper, was a voice. "Why did you leave the window open?" The whisper looped again and again, fading into static, then returning sharper, closer, more direct. "Why did you leave the window open?" As if it wasn't just asking, it was accusing. I pulled the disc out, but the sound didn't stop. I broke the jukebox. The whisper continued. It was no longer playing through the game. It was playing through my headset, through the actual speakers, a direct audio feed. I yanked my headphones off and threw them aside. The sound kept going. Only when I turned my character around did it finally stop. Standing in the corner of the room was the figure again, no longer still, no longer passive. It was breathing. Not just idle animation, but visibly rising and falling, like a mob that had gained lungs. Its head twitched slightly, and in its hands was something new. A door, an oak door, flickering in and out of the player model's hands. The item glitched, then dropped to the floor. It landed with a sound I'd never heard before. Something wooden but broken, like splinters snapping. I picked it up. The name was Your Exit. I stared at the door in my hotbar, hovering over it again to make sure I'd read it right. Your Exit. It looked like a normal oak door, but the tooltip shimmered faintly, almost like an enchanted item. I tried placing it on the nearest wall. Denied. I tried again. Stone, dirt, crying obsidian, it didn't matter. The game wouldn't let me place it anywhere in that tunnel. My only option was to carry it back to the cabin. So I turned and retraced my steps through that pulsing hallway, back toward the base I thought I knew. When I reached the cabin door, the sky had changed. It wasn't dusk, not night, not even void. It was just blank. No Sunday, no clouds, just a flat, gray ceiling pressing down from above, like someone had forgotten to finish the world. The trees were stuck mid-motion, leaves frozen. A sheep hovered slightly above the ground, eyes wide, body still. Time wasn't moving anymore. I walked to where the original door once stood, where that thing had watched me, and placed the new one. This time, it worked. The sound wasn't wood. It was metal. Click. Like a mechanism locking into place. The sky turned black instant, and the door creaked open. I didn't walk through right away, just stood there, staring into the absolute nothing beyond the frame. No terrain, no particles, no horizon. But it wasn't empty. Something was inside that void, watching, waiting. I stepped through. No fade in, no loading screen, just a shift. I was no longer on the porch. I stood in a narrow corridor, made of warped planks and basalt. Silent, breathless, and on every wall, lined perfectly in rows, were skins. Not skulls, skins. All of them were me. Every version I'd ever worn, every identity, every experiment, all frozen like portraits in a museum of someone else's memories. None of them smiled. They just watched. And as I looked down that hallway, deeper than it had any right to go, I knew something simple, something quiet. This world was still remembering me. And now, it was my turn to remember it. Thanks for staying through the night. If you ever see your own skin walking through the trees, don't wave back. I'll see you in the next cabin confession.